Welcome everyone once again to our Wednesday night, coming to you from the Eastern Mediterranean. And this evening I have the great joy, the great pleasure of having with us our dear brother Neville, who is joining us from Oxford in the UK. So Neville, welcome to you. Are you able to hear me and see me? I think you're muted, Nev. Is he able to unmute himself?
Yes, he can.
Okay, Nev. Yeah, still can't hear you. No, I cannot hear you. Okay, your mic seems to be open. No, not yet. Maybe something needs to be plugged in, or there's a wire loose somewhere. Okay, that may help. No, not yet. Sometimes when you go out and come back again. Okay, the suggestion maybe log out and reconnect again. If that may help. Okay, well, what we can do in the meantime, as we sort this out, perhaps I can just ask the Zoom team maybe just to play a little bit more music and image for a few more minutes of meditation while we sort out Nev's, Neville, oh goodness, is connecting to audio, it says.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Excellent. Great stuff.
Well, welcome. Jolly nice to see you.
What's that you've got on the wall behind you?
Oh, it's a painting. It's a kind of pastel colored painting of flowers and so on.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, nothing too exciting.
Behind me, I've had to pull the screen down because the GRC garden is there, but all the light pours in and you wouldn't be able to see anything of me. Mind you, that might be a bit of an advantage.
Okay, well, we'd first like to welcome you with some flowers. I think Demet is going to appear on the screen. And there she is. There she is. Can we
brilliant.
Spotlight? There's
Demet. Look at that. How lovely.
Behind the flowers and the flower.
Thank you so much, Demet. They're beautiful. Wow.
Which is out in the garden. So
they look like orchids, are they? Orchid family?
Yes.
Yes, they are. So most will know Brother Neville, but here's a bit about him for those who may not know. So Neville's been with Baba for around 40 years or so. He's an author and a journalist, and he specialized for much of his career in writing about health and medicine. And he returned to medical journalism recently with a number of articles challenging the orthodox approaches to COVID. And some of the books that he's written include The Teachings of Dadi, the book I Know How to Live, I Know How to Die, and also the book called Will to Be Well, The Real Alternative Medicine. He was married for 25 years to Liz, who was also an author and journalist, and they have 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. So a full Lokic and alocic life. So we have a lot to learn from Neville, as I have been doing over the decades. And it's also great that although he's a senior brother and very much respected by Dadi, I saw, but also he has an interesting sense of humor, where he doesn't take himself too seriously. And that's been great for many of us to see that balance of authority and seriousness, but also lightness and joviality. So the topic he's chosen for himself is to do with the taste of truth, having just one thing in the mind. So I'm intrigued to hear what he'll share with us tonight. And just a reminder, Neville, there is simultaneous translation in several languages. So to keep the speed fairly slow, please. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yog. And if I get overexcited and start speaking too fast, please feel free to signal, please slow down. Very happy for that to happen. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for this invitation to join you. Actually, Yogesh gave me a topic initially that was stop making excuses, start getting results. And it's a very interesting topic, definitely something that I would have been interested to churn on, but I actually requested this other idea because I felt that it was perhaps a bit more carrot rather than stick. You know the expression, an inability to, I remember it was a psychiatrist who told me the essence of neurosis is an inability to follow the carrot or the stick. So, when you find that you can't go after something that you really do actually rather like, but something blocks you, or when the drama repeatedly gives you a stick and yet you can't stop doing what causes that, that's a kind of neurotic tendency. And to different degrees, I would say probably just about all of us suffer from this neurotic state, which is, it rules in Ravan's kingdom. But I particularly liked a sentence that came up in the Murli just very recently, and I'll read it to you. Baba said, "It is only now that you develop a taste for just one thing in your mind." This was Sakar Baba on the 14th of June. And I was struck by this sentence, only now that you develop a taste for just one thing in your mind. Now, a carrot is hung in front of a donkey. That's where part of where this saying about the carrot and the stick comes from. The carrot is a means of pulling the donkey forward, and if it doesn't respond to that, then it gets the stick so that it gets somewhere. But this taste, this one taste, isn't that a fascinating idea? I don't know if you noticed it when it came up. I don't think we stopped here at Oxford when the Murli was read, but it really struck me, and I've been thinking about it, and that's why I wanted to share something of my thoughts on that. So what is that one thing? Just to repeat that, he said, it is only now that you develop a taste for just one thing in your mind. So the question is, what is that one thing? And many probably would say, well, it must be love. We often hear the saying, God is love. But a Murli from earlier this week, I think, might point us in another direction. I don't think it is love. I think love is something that is vital to the journey, but I think it's a means to an end. I don't think it is the nectar. I don't think it is the taste, the one thing that if we develop this taste in the mind, that it gives us a focus and a concentration that is absolutely natural and will carry us forward. It won't be a question of, there won't be any pain in it. It will be there won't be even a kind of hard effort. It will be a carrot that we naturally go for if we really recognize it. I think part of the problem is that maybe it takes time to recognize what that one thing really is. So, yes, in a Murli this week, Baba commented on the song, "You are the ocean of love, we thirst for one drop." You probably remember, I think it might have been Monday that this came up. You are the ocean of love, we thirst for one drop. And he said, love can't be given to drink. He's very funny sometimes. He said, love cannot be given to drink. It's a feeling. So that had me wondering, well, okay, but so what's the difference between a feeling and a taste? So we'll look further at this. He said in the same Murli, it is the nectar of knowledge that we are given to drink, and that is that takes us to heaven. So he was talking about Baba being the ocean of knowledge, and Brahma Baba being the first to drink this nectar of knowledge, and then the Ganges of knowledge, mixing the metaphors, the Ganges of knowledge that we become as a result of what we receive from Bapdada. So it is knowledge rather than love for which we develop a taste, according to this interpretation that I'm thinking about and offering, and inviting you to think about, and maybe let me know what you think as we go on. I think what Baba is trying to do is wean us off our bhakti sanskars. It was clear actually in this Murli from Monday that was what he was doing. He was talking about Rakshabandhan and how people might feel happy with these various celebrations, but there's no meaning in them because there's no knowledge, there's no understanding, no real understanding when they are just have that devotional flavor. And this is why I find Sakar Mullis especially very strong on knowledge. That's why I couldn't understand them for years. But Avyak Baba I was able to understand because he's very logical and he talks about kind of quite straightforward things that are, yes, an ideal, but very natural and loving. But Sakar Baba, he works with all different levels of reality. And this is something that, as time has gone on, I've really learned to value. So I think it's especially when we're depleted that we feel those surges of love in celebrating these various festivals. Some deep chord is rung inside us, whether it's Shivratri, Lakshmi Narayan, the various things that we did in our bhakti journey. For me, I in growing up with a little bit of Christianity in my background, I loved Christmas. Absolutely loved it. I loved the story of the baby Jesus and the wise men and the Virgin Mary. There was so much that was so beautiful in it. Not Easter, I didn't like that bit about the suffering on the cross, but I loved Christmas and the birth of this symbol of purity and strength. But Even though love is a vital part of the journey, and Baba himself said recently that the bond of remembrance is very strong because of the burden of our mistakes, our sins, our wrongdoing. The bond of remembrance, which is love, that's strong. That bond is there because we recognize that we have missed something. But without meaning, it just becomes an indulgence. It becomes a temporary fix. That's the kind of the way my thought was going. And Baba was inviting us to see, was there any meaning in the devotional practices? What was the reality? I hope you're with me so far, because this is, it's very, very central to the path of Raja Yoga becoming really powerful and meaningful, as opposed to being something that we are just drawn into from love, and perhaps it might be some wisdom that we appreciate there, but this one thing is something else. He said, there is benefit in reality. There is only loss in unreality. Here, everything is a matter of knowledge. So you see how much Sakar Baba puts this emphasis on knowledge. It's but of course then that begs the question, well, what knowledge? What is knowledge? What does he mean by it? Okay, so let's go a bit further. I think probably one reason why I'm especially interested in this is because I brought a very large chunk of unreality into many years of my time as a Brahmin. Somehow, because of the intensity of love that I felt, I thought, oh, well, yeah, this is something, I must be a Brahmin because I've got these wonderful, blissful feelings, taking drishti from the daddies, the beauty and magic of Madhaban, touching down in India and feeling that surge of some long forgotten land. There were so many wonderful moments, but according to what I'm trying to share, I was wrong to think that meant that I had got anywhere. It was encouraging, it was necessary, it held me on the path until I did understand, but I don't think it is the one thing.
Apologies, Nev, there's a request to go slower, please.
Oh, right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so the feeling that has grown in me is that it's understanding, it's knowledge that really frees me. And I did have a point a few years back where all of a sudden, almost, it felt as though Baba was addressing me. It was like a voice in my head where he spoke to me, telling me that with him, I could fulfill my longing to love. And somehow it was only when I was ready to hear that it came to me like a voice, and it was meaningful to me because perhaps enough of my old karmic debts had been settled that I was at last able to really understand that I am made in God's image, if you like. I really am a child of God, as all of us are, but we've forgotten that. I've come from that one. It's not that I am that one, but I've come from that source, that seed. Somehow in the only in the last few years that has really been meaningful for me. And it's this feeling of the penny dropping, you say in English, like there's a flash of recognition and understanding. It's this feeling that I treasure so much. And I think it's probably, even though Baba said that love is a feeling, it's not something you drink, but this recognition of who I am is so precious. And it is, for me, it is this that is the one thing. It's Shiv Baba, this one thing, just this one thing that I've got a taste for now and feel drawn to not let move too far away from my awareness. It's this one thing that I feel this great pull towards now. It is the original me. It's also Shiv Baba. It's almost as if, like that combined form that comes, it's not that I'm there yet, but there's the recognition that Shiv Baba and myself in my original condition are indeed made of the same stuff, the same pure consciousness. That's fantastic. And that's something that can only fall into place reliably with Gyan. Baba gives us the full, rounded picture. Who he is, who I am, how I became depleted, and how I, through relationship with Baba, through listening to Baba, through remembering Baba, I'm becoming what I was originally. All of that is somehow wrapped up in this simple, beautiful awareness. So it's not love, and it's not information. Both love and information play a part in enabling us to develop this taste. But what it really is, I think, is a taste for truth. Truth is not facts. Truth precedes facts. Truth has to do with, the light in the eyes, that true sense of self-awareness. With that, the self-sovereignty that is restored in me when I'm aware that I am that light and that I'm not Neville. That Neville is a part that the light is playing, and it's a great relief to know that distinction. So self-sovereignty that Baba so often speaks of it's really like a wholeness of consciousness, which of course we know that Baba, even though he doesn't have a brain and body of his own, but he always is that pure consciousness, that truth, that sat, that living energy. And this experience, when this memory comes back and makes sense, this is a beautiful taste. And when you keep that taste alive, the journey becomes so much easier to negotiate. Sister Sudesh always used to puzzle me with a sort of mantra that she would recite, and probably many of you have heard her say this when she's meditating. She will go into this taste and she will say, I am a pure, peaceful soul. And my logical mind, before I understood this taste, used to say, but how can you say that? Nobody is pure now. But with when you understand that this is the nectar that Baba wants us to drink. This is the ocean he wants us to bathe in. This is the knowledge with which he's showering us. All this contributes to this beautiful taste of just one thing, that state of purity. And it doesn't matter that Neville doesn't have that state of purity, or even that the soul doesn't at the moment have that state of purity. The point is, Baba is sharing the knowledge that that was my original state, and that is my state, under my eternal state, underneath the layers of body consciousness that have come in the intervening eons. So I hope that's making some sense. There's one more word I'd like to say on this, and then perhaps we could open up for some Q&A. We all have our parts to play, and they're going to be very individual. When Baba says that we have to follow him, I think it's a mistake to take that too literally. Like, his part was his part, giving his wealth to found the Yagya, displaying the beautiful qualities of leadership that he had. Mothering, along with Mama, those hundreds of Kumaris and other mothers. His part was his part at that time. My part cannot be the same as his, but the way in which I can follow him is by embracing and bringing my mind back again and again to that one taste. That was what he did, and that's what he was speaking of in this Murli. That I can do. And if I do that, then it becomes much easier to negotiate Neville's part. If truth is alive in me, because I've really got that desire to come back again and again to that one taste. If truth is really alive in me in that way, then the wisdom of how to handle external things is going to stay with me. It's only when I fall into my habits of body consciousness and forget that one thing that the journey becomes very difficult. And yes, true soul consciousness does take practice, effort, time, settlement, but do you see what a beautiful goal it is? How gorgeous it is to aspire to that, and perhaps have a feeling of how there's me and there's God, and there's the part is something else. I'm really feeling this. It doesn't mean I'm disconnecting from the part, but there's me and that one. And as long as I keep that alive, then I'm bringing the right consciousness into the circumstances and the settlements that are going on in me and around me. It's as if I'll know very deeply inside that everything is okay, even while the limitations in my role continue. Everything is okay. These two are really possible. I cannot renounce my role. If I try to do that, I will get into difficulties because I won't be facing the karmic settlements that my role entails. But embracing the role with the happiness of knowing that I have that one with me and that I'm keeping alive that one taste in my mind, then everything becomes so much easier. I'm really grateful for this journey now. There have been times when I've really felt stretched to the limit by it because of lack of understanding and karmic accounts and so forth. But I'm now feeling such a deep, stable internal happiness. It's much more, I value it much more than the intense love that I experienced in my early days. That played its part, sure. It's not that it was wrong. It's not that it was bad. It was necessary, and it bonded me to Baba and the family. But it's not reality, actually. The reality is this restoration of consciousness, pure, true consciousness, restoration of truth that that allows me to feel this sense that I'm alive, I'm eternal, and I know who Baba is. And no matter what happens, I can keep dusting myself down and picking myself up because it's all part of the journey. I'll read the sentence again. I love it so much. It is only now that you develop a taste for just one thing in your mind. Those were Baba's words. Isn't that good fortune to develop that taste? I don't think we ever developed that taste throughout the cycle. We got little flashes of it, I'm sure. But the whole package, Baba's coming, the package of knowledge, recognition of the time, all of that is needed actually to keep it constantly in our minds.
Should we come to some questions now, Nev?
Let's do that, Yog. Yes. Yeah, very happy to.
Okay. If anybody has a question, please type it in the chat box. You raised some great points there, Neville. So, one question that comes to mind immediately. You mentioned role, and often it comes up, I think, for pretty much every Brahmin at some point about what is my role, and should I change my role? So the question really is, does the role change by itself and I should accept that? Or does it change if I make a change in the role? So how does it work? Does the role have a life of its own? Or do I have some responsibility to make some changes and redirect my role? How do you see that? And if I could just mention, we don't usually open the mics for questions. If you could type them in the chat box, and then I'll read them out. Yeah, thanks, Nev.
It's a great question, Yog. And I don't know if you have some thoughts on it. Just thinking back over my own experience, it feels as if there have been some decisions at times that I have taken that have changed my role. And it feels as if those were within the part. You know, there's an acceptance that they had to happen that way. What I thought perhaps at the time that I was making the decision, but it was predetermined within the drama that I would actually make that change. I think where there is a feeling that there's not much option but to make a change, I think probably that's a good signal that whether you're thinking that you're doing it or that the drama or Baba are making you do it, that it's probably the right thing to do. I think if there's a question mark in your mind, then it might mean that that you are trying to impose on the soul something from your own thinking that might not be accurate. You know, if there's some kind of conflict in your mind, if you're really not sure, like for example, should I offer my surrender to should I offer myself in a surrendered life in a center? And if there is, I'm not sure about this, but I have the feeling that if there is a conflict going on in your mind about whether that is a good thing to do or not, then I think it's probably best not to go down that route until there is real clarity, because it might be that you have an image of yourself as a surrendered Brahmin and that you will move faster that way if you were living in a center full time. But you might actually be avoiding the karmic settlements or responsibilities that are truly yours. And so a part of you would know that. And so that question mark, that conflict would continue inside you. And therefore, in circumstances like that, I think probably better to wait until there is greater clarity. It might be that at a certain point, the drama will clearly free you from your previous responsibilities. And at that point, then you might say, well, now it's clear, yes, definitely this should be the next phase in my journey. That's taking it in a fairly extreme example. I think there are quite a lot of smaller things where similar questions arise. We might feel that we would be better off in different circumstances. It's a bit like that idea, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. But there's also truth in the idea, again from gardens, that sometimes a plant may be failing to thrive in a particular situation and move it, and it may suddenly start to do very well. So both of those considerations are present in something like this. That's my first response to your question. Yo, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Well, I would just add to what you've said that if I am honest and sincere in putting Baba's directions into practice, and I'm also churning the knowledge and paying attention to being soul conscious, and as per something that came up in the Murli last week, that I would receive a very clear touching that I should now do this, or I should do that. But also, it's a good idea to verify things with the senior most instruments. So I think that that checking balance, that checkpoint is also there. Mm-hmm. So both of those two things. But I think the important thing is the sincerity in doing what I'm doing in terms of following Baba's guidance, and then only the best can happen if that honesty and sincerity is there, I feel.
That's nice. And actually, you've reminded me that my recent experience might be relevant in this context, where during the shutdown of GRC, the Global Retreat Centre, for its refurbishment, and that continued for quite a long time, I had a stretch of 2.5 years where I moved to the Lighthouse, a small retreat centre on the south coast of England. And I had an office up on the roof and a very simple, straightforward life. Amrit Vela, Murli, breakfast at my desk by 9 o'clock in the morning, a morning's work, off a Borg, bit of a break, perhaps a few emails, a walk on the seafront, and a bit more work, so emails later on, some study and sleep. And I felt when the COVID, you mentioned at the outset that I've done some journalism that has been very challenging to the COVID orthodoxy. Right from 18 months back, I was writing articles that were deeply questioning the wisdom of almost every aspect of the way the crisis was handled, arguing that it was multiplying the damage caused by this very unpleasant genetically engineered virus, that the fear and the harm to old people and children and economies was way, way out of proportion. And then moving on also to some very strong reports about problems with the vaccine and the enforced, in many instances, vaccination of billions of people. So a lot of questions that were in my mind, I felt drawn to come out of my retirement as a journalist because I had experience. I used to work as a medical journalist, and it reminded me of similar mistakes that had been made during panics in the past. And I felt I must write about this right from the start. And I wrote to several of my old newspapers, but I didn't get a reply from any of them because I've been out of the business for 25 years. 20 years anyway. But then suddenly a little sequence of events gave me an outlet for a quite substantial newsletter and website who loved this work, and I had nearly 60 articles published over that period. And I feel as if it actually helped influence policy in this country, because from having been one of the first to sign up to all those damaging arrangements, England was the first, I think, to withdraw from them. And we've seen the wisdom of that withdrawal in that COVID is still around. There are still people becoming infected, but all the collateral damage of lockdowns and all the rest of it has finished, and life is actually returning pretty well to normal. So for some reason, I felt drawn to do this. I mean, it's really Lockic work, but I had the feeling that I must return to it as a contribution to society, rightly or wrongly. I had that feeling. I also have the feeling underneath that it's as if somehow the drama wanted me to do this to contribute to a recognition, the growing recognition in the world of the failure of materialistic science. Scientific materialism is a failed philosophy. It lies behind most of the problems in today's world, telling us that we are nothing but matter and that mind is just an emergent property of the brain. It's so unscientific actually, but it is a dominant belief system. And I think that people's confidence in that philosophy is going to be weakened in time as the recognition grows of how many mistakes the scientists led us into on this one. So, it's throughout the time doing this, I wasn't sure, am I just returning to some old sanskar? Am I just fulfilling a need to be doing something useful, not really useful to the world, but it's getting me out there sort of thing? I don't think so. I have a sense from the way it unfolded that this wasn't a reversion into some kind of Maya, but that this was right for me. And it also helped me on my journey because even while doing all of this work, I was offering the work to Baba and making much more effort than I had been able to do in the past to keep Baba with me. That is, to offer these views, but not to become angry and upset. Yes, to write strongly, but not to have that ego involvement that I think had quite often been a part of my drive as a journalist, certainly before Gyan. So in a variety of ways, this activity really seemed right. And yet you couldn't say that this was following Baba, except that I do think following Baba means keeping that one thing in mind.
Okay, thanks, Nev. There are some questions which have appeared in the chat box. There is one in Spanish, and I ask if somebody can translate that into English, and then I'll read it out. But I'll come to another one in the meantime. So one question, does Baba interfere with our drama in any way?
I think he does. I think he intervenes. Like he says how he gives the return for intense devotional practice, he gives visions. I think sometimes the master manipulator intervenes to arrange that things that need to happen do happen. I think that thought, that voice that came into my head when I was ready for it a few years back, that with me you can fulfill your longing to love. I think that was Baba. I think Baba is an entity, not just an energy, but yes, an entity that, has unlimited tentacles that can influence the unfolding of the drama, even though definitely he says that in the main he just brings the seed of renewal and then lets the drama unfold as it must. But during this confluence age, I think he is, I get the feeling that he is definitely helping from time to time, making things happen that would be so unlikely to happen otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Here's another one about roles. How do you understand that the role you have now is the right one?
It's a constant question in my mind. I think it has to do with contentment. If you are playing the right role, you will be contributing in Baba's task, and you will also be settling your karmic debts. So simple contentment isn't enough, actually, because you might be going through some tough times, but nevertheless, you're moving in the right direction. I think the only answer I can really think of is related to how I responded to Yogesh's question earlier, that I think we have to sort of be monitoring ourselves. We have to be very responsible towards ourselves. If we think that we're shrinking or going backwards, we must act to find out why. If we think we're not moving forward fast enough, we can also look at that. That's all part of keeping a chart and those kind of things. Actually, for making some big break, it's so individual. This was a big break for me to go back into the journalism, and yet it was also facilitated by the drama. So I think that's a part of it, that if things unfold easily for you, if you might have had it in mind to make a change, but it didn't happen, maybe you tried, but it didn't happen, but then suddenly the door opens for you, then go through it, because almost certainly that is the right time to move on in some way.
Okay, thank you. So the question in Spanish has been translated by 2 people now simultaneously into English, thanks to Michelle and Enrique. So I'll just read out that question. So how to realize when do I need to make deeper changes in my life, and how there are moments when I feel I need more specific guidance to make a turn in my life. Otherwise, efforts become circular. There is a need to have other experiences in life.
Very nice question, and it brings me back to having that one thing in mind that Baba was speaking of. I don't know how one can accelerate the experience of that taste. I think we've all had it, definitely. That's part of what makes us Brahmins. I think when we are neglecting it, when we're not tasting enough of that truth, that's when we feel that we must have a bit more from other sides, We might eat too much to comfort oneself, or it might be that we think, well, maybe I ought to have a friend of some sort that I can share this journey with. Not a bad thing, Baba says, to have a friend, but there might be more than just looking for guidance from a friend, actually sort of creating some dependency, which of course is not going to be helpful. There's a host of ways in which we tried to fill the gap left when we had lost that taste. Becoming workaholics, for example, putting work before everything in order to try to feel as if I do have a place in the world. But if all of those things, all of those many and varied ways in which we comforted ourselves and found some purpose in life during Kali Yuga, it just really, if they are pulling again, then do what you can to hoik yourself into the, I don't know if you translate hoik, it's like hoist, lift yourself into the experience of the one. Give yourself those opportunities. We've been discussing here at GRC prior to reopening the need for a really different way of working. We did become very task-oriented previously. We were putting the task before everything, and there were a lot of pressures. We weren't getting the balance right. And now there are all sorts of conversations going on, very constructive ones, and we're drawing on the help of very experienced yogis like Yogesh and Enrique to help us to reorient and move forward in ways that we escape those tendencies to be forgetful. So I think my answer is, whenever you have that feeling of staleness, of a need for some external comfort, don't mind too much about indulging it in the short term. I think, sometimes to lift yourself, this is a very personal view, but I've seen the occasional movie that has lifted me out of depression. I've enjoyed a chocolate or ice cream or a cappuccino at times when my spirits needed a bit of a lift. And I don't criticize myself for taking advantage of those little helps, but above all, when there is that feeling, yes, maybe watch England versus Germany women's football final, which may be coming up, but all these things that bring us together, lift us out of our immediate reality, they can all be of help as a temporary lift, but use them judiciously so that you lift yourself into the recognition, this is who I really want to feel like, not that sort of dull, dead feeling that can come on us sometimes. I want to feel alive like this all the time. So how can I make sure that carrot, that taste really is present with me more? And then so you seek out friends who can guide you, go and see Yog or Enrique or whoever, some guide that you trust. Communicate, explain, don't let things just drift. It's really important. Otherwise, the ego starts putting up defenses around yourself, and then it sort of pushes Baba's stuff to one side more and more, and you can find yourself on a slippery slope back into acute body consciousness, which is an unreality, but it has its own pull. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I could really feel the feeling you had behind that last sharing. It really came from your gut, I felt. Okay, there's one more question. I think this will make this the last one. So just read what's here. I'd like to feel what you were referring with this taste that you want to share with us. Is the taste being myself? What I'm asking with this being myself, in the sense that I am neither only love nor only knowledge, but pure being.
Yeah.
Because love and gyan still mixed with our bhakti sanskars.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pure being. That is a beautiful way to put it. That's absolutely right. I don't think it is love. And when Baba uses the word knowledge, he's referring to this package that he's sharing with us about pure being. And he's also giving us a context that allows us to get back into that sense of pure being, even though we're in Kali Yuga. So yes, the taste is of pure being, and it is, of course, it has, when you have that, as Baba said also the other day, when you have that sense of soul consciousness, truly of your pure being, you automatically find yourself in the company of God.
Okay, another question has just popped into the box, so I'll just read that, although it's a big topic in itself. So the question is, whilst the drama repeats seemingly identical, could it just be possible that souls could play their roles in a better way? I do get concerned that I really would like my path to be less painful, i.e. shame, hurt, etc. With knowledge, it's tough to accept that I'll be doing certain iron-aged things in such a tamapradan way all over again. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I empathize with that. No, I don't think it is possible for it to be different. I really appreciate the understanding of this package that is the drama, that there is just the one play, and that it has its own perfection. I think we just have to recognize that the painful times are an attempt on the part of the script, if you like, Baba, my karma, to guide me away from the things that led me into that pain and guide me towards the freedom of my pure being, my original condition. So I think, I'm afraid that the concept of easy Raj Yoga is a bit of a con, but it's easy. Baba explains sometimes, he says, we call it that because it doesn't mean tying yourself up in knots and putting yourself through forceful deprivations and things like that. But the actual journey is a tough one, depending on what we have to settle. I think if we look at someone like Daddy Gulzar, I don't think she has had that much tough experiences. She, at the age of 8, she was living with Baba and was being awoken by songs of, the beauty of the golden age and lullabies to go to sleep. And she was so full of this, grew up so full of this truth that for her it was just this smooth journey. For Daddy Janki, wow, something else. Married off against her will, abused by her husband, felt that she missed out so much on the Kumaris that were there. Tremendous sense of urgency and loss and effort all her life. Just the last 3 or 4 years, she finally relaxed into saying that this heart of mine is filled with happiness and this head and brain are cool, because she'd taken everything into herself, but a long lifelong journey. So we have to expect that there will be ups and downs, but know for sure from people like the daddies and from those like myself who've had plenty of ups and downs along the way, that it really is worthwhile. Just have to stick at it, and the freedom is at the end of the road. There's no question.
That's lovely. Thank you, Nev. And the good thing is we'll be having this particular session once again in 5,000 years.
Wonderful, Jörg.
That's a plus.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, let's dwell on the positive.
Okay, it's been wonderful and engaging as always. Would you like to see who's been with us tonight?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
So let's all open our cameras and go to the gallery view.